Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. This is my second question and answer video in response to the lovely questions that you left for me on my gratitude video after I reached 1,000 subscribers. This still boggles my mind, and I thank you all for being here, and I thank you for leaving me such thoughtful questions. So I just don't want to bore anybody, so I've decided to do this in smaller segments rather than one long video. So here we go. I have a question from Ollie at Criminali, who asks, what was my least favorite book to teach when I was a teacher? And I kind of addressed this question in the first video, where I just talked about books that were hard to teach. Many years ago, we used to teach Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, and it was just impossible, and it got harder and harder as the years went on, and we finally decided that we weren't going to keep trying to teach that to kids, and we decided we could introduce Hawthorne through some of his wonderful short stories, and that was more than enough, and that if kids were going to read The Scarlet Letter, they could read that in college or a little bit later. So while I would say that was the toughest book to teach, and we abandoned it. Okay, Joshua Crebo Reads asked several questions. He wants to know what is my all-time favorite book, and there are just too many. I have several favorites. I have several that will always be near and dear to my heart, but I can't come up with one title. Toni Morrison's Beloved is certainly one of my top novels ever read. To Kill a Mockingbird, for totally different reasons, just because of the role that it played in my early life. That is certainly one. Pride and Prejudice is a favorite. Wuthering Heights is a favorite. Jane Eyre is a favorite. I just I taught for too long, and I've lived long enough to know that I can't give you one title, but I have several favorites that I read and reread and revisit. So okay, have you ever written your own poetry? Yes, I absolutely have always written my own poetry, as a young person and through my adulthood. I don't think I'm good at it. I think I'm a pretty bad poet. I've read my poetry in a couple of places, but I'm not a poet. I mean, I write poetry, but I'm not a poet. And then, however, I have helped a lot of kids to write poetry through a literary magazine that I ran while I was teaching, and certainly encouraged lots of kids to write and to share their poetry. Do you like to listen to music, and if so, what kind? I think I like classic rock. I was a teenager in the 70s. That's my era. I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. He will always be important to me. Bob Dylan. Basically classic rock, I guess, is my first love in music. Okay, David Novak Reads Poetry says, you have really focused on poetry in your channel. I would like to hear you talk about your favorite and least favorite poets. Congrats on the milestone. Well, I've been presenting a lot of my favorite poets. I guess my all-time favorite poets are Adrienne Rich, um, Mary Oliver, Billy Collins, W.S. Merwin. Deeply, I'm digging deeply into Merwin right now. Ada Limon, uh, Naomi Shihab Nye, um, and I've been a long time reader of Robert Frost and William Wordsworth. Um, do I have a least favorite poet? Eh, I, I probably have poets that don't speak to me the same way the poets that I regularly put on my channel do. I struggled with Alexander Pope. I wouldn't call him a least favorite. I felt like I didn't get him. Um, I had a lot of trouble with Wallace Stevens. I never really knew what was going on in Wallace Stevens, but I always assume it's me. You know, there's something about me that, you know, I'm not getting it. So, you know, I don't have least favorites. I just have poets that I love and that I read over and over again and that I keep coming back to. And then I guess poets that I don't read. Okay. Um, Heather's Music 8833 asks, my question is, what inspired you to create your own channel? I was really adrift when I first retired. I was really lost, and there were a lot of reasons for that. And I was really struggling, and I discovered BookTube. And for over a year, I just followed a couple of BookTubers that that I found. The first was Angelia at Read and Reread, and then I discovered Michael K. Vaughan, and then I discovered Steve Donahue, and there was just like a period in my life when I first retired when I just watched the three of them, you know, every day, whatever videos they put out, and I watched their back videos too. And I think after, you know, doing that for a while and getting my reading back on track, I started expanding and meeting other booktubers and participating in some live streams and people like MJ and Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, and Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, and Brian, the bookish Texan, and Hannah at Hannah's Books. These people were very encouraging of me when I was just dropping in to their live streams and you know, commenting on their videos. So I think I just felt inspired by all of them to create my own channel, and it just became a really wonderful outlet. Lots of bumps along the way, which I've talked about in other videos, but it was a wonderful creative outlet. So I think and when I started, you know, Angelia was just so encouraging, and MJ as well. Okay. Okay. MJ has some questions. MJ says, one of my questions is, what booktube channels are total guilty pleasures to watch, and what other hobbies do you enjoy? You know, I watch a lot of booktube channels, and many of them are channels that have nothing to do with the kinds of books that I read. I just like the people who are presenting. So I don't think of any of my BookTube channels as guilty pleasures, but I have YouTube channels that are definite guilty pleasures. I watch very little actual TV, but I watch some vintage TV YouTube channels, and it's just pure fun. And those are guilty pleasures. I watch the Brady Bunch channel. I watch the Partridge Family on YouTube, stuff from my childhood and my adolescence. Those are my guilty pleasures on YouTube. I also do watch probably too much news on YouTube, but I would not call that a guilty pleasure. In fact, there's very little pleasure involved. It's just something of an obsession. Okay, but great. Thank you for those questions, MJ. Steve Donahue says, I'm dying to know if the people in your real world life know you make YouTube videos, and if so, what do they think of it? And when was the moment when you realized, wow, I'm a booktuber? So yes, the people in my real life do know, and this is real life, but in the world that I interact with, not on YouTube, yes, they do know. In the beginning, there was just a small group of people that knew, and that group kind of started to grow, and that's the group that I call the Mod Squad, because they all subscribe to my channel, and they watch the people who are my friends, and when somebody is approaching a milestone in subscriber count, I call them in, and they come and find you, and they subscribe to you. So that's a group that that was like the first group that knew about what I was doing here with YouTube, and then a couple of these people were former students of mine, and they encouraged me to reach out to the larger former student population, and that's what pushed me over the 1,000 mark. And I'm so delighted to see my former students and their families on this channel. It's just done my heart a world of good. And then what was the moment when I realized, wow, I am a booktuber? I think actually, Steve, you are responsible for that moment, because Steve decided to bring back Poetry Thursday, which was something that he always used to do and then had stopped doing it for a while. And then he started making Poetry Thursday videos again. And the first time he did that, he made a comment about me, and he described me as the bully and the harridan of BookTube, and said stuff like that. I said I would poke his eyes out, and I would step on his neck, and do all these terrible things to him if he didn't start reading poetry again on Thursdays. And when he said it, it was so funny, and it took me so off guard. I was actually across the room from my laptop where the video was playing, and I like just laughed out loud, and I felt like I had arrived. That Steve could depict me in this way, and have such fun at my expense, bringing me into the fun. I just thought, I'm a booktuber. I've arrived. So thank you, Steve. Okay. These are very complicated. There are a couple here that have like 5 parts to them. So I'm gonna hold off on those for right now. Next, I have Maria Andrea at Books and Bocadillos, a lovely channel. And she asks if I have a favorite literary quote. And 2 things came to mind. One is a quote from the writer Maya Angelou, and this is a quote that I had hanging in a very prominent place in my classroom, and it's a quote that you've probably all heard or seen in other places, and I don't know exactly where it came from, what work of hers. I think it was, I don't think it was actually in one of her books that she said this, but I had a big poster of this hanging in my classroom, and the quote is, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I thought that was a good thing to tell my kids, my students, and it was certainly something that guided me as a teacher. I was very aware of my words and my actions. I was very aware of the emotional experience that I was giving kids in my care. So, so that is certainly one. And then we've been talking a lot of late about loss on BookTube. We've lost some wonderful members of our community, and several of my BookTube friends also have had significant losses in their lives. And I have a favorite quote from one of my favorite poets, which is William Wordsworth, and that's about loss. And that quote is, "There's a comfort in the strength of love. 'Twill make a thing endurable, which else would overset the brain or break the heart." Thank you, Mary Andrea, for those questions. And thank you for your beautiful channel. Okay. Jennifer B. 7268. Jennifer was my student a long time ago. She says, "It is so lovely to hear your voice, almost like being back in your classroom again. I have a question to submit. You wrote that recently you've started enjoying science fiction. My question is, what sci-fi books and authors have you found that you like? Any recommendations?" Jen. So I've been reading classic science fiction because I've been following Michael K. Vaughan, and I've been reading his science fiction starter kit. And so I've been reading people like Edgar Rice Burroughs and H.G. Wells and Ray Bradbury. And so mostly I've been reading the older science fiction. Bradbury has become really important to me. I recently read Something Wicked This Way Comes. I've, of course, read Fahrenheit 451. That's actually a book I used to teach, so I wasn't totally new to these writers. But a lot of the classics. But a newer or current science fiction writer that I've discovered is Becky Chambers and her Wayfarers series. Really, really wonderful, wonderful stuff. But Jen, you know a lot more about science fiction than I do. I know that. You give me some recommendations. Okay. Okay. Dave at Book Blather wants to know what my 3 all-time favorite books are. I have trouble with narrowing these things down. To Kill a Mockingbird will always be on my top list. Toni Morrison's Beloved will always be one of my top books. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice is certainly up there. I think The Great Gatsby is one too, and I know I've given more than 3, but those are, if you ask me to give 10, I could do that more easily. But thank you, Dave, for the lovely comment and question. Okay. Another former student of mine, her handle is Dale K. Patronus 2010. This is Kathy. She said something very lovely. She said, "Congratulations from a former student who greatly appreciated the variety of books in your class. After years of multiple classics by the same couple of authors, I remember I was worried about having to read more in our 20th century fiction class, but you introduced us to so many writers and made me excited for classroom books again. For the Q&A, the book is almost always better, but are there any movie adaptations of books that you particularly like?" Absolutely. I think that To Kill a Mockingbird, the movie, is a masterpiece and as wonderful as the novel. And I always enjoyed teaching the novel and introducing kids, if they hadn't already seen it, to that movie. That's one where I think the movie is as good as the novel. And I also had occasion in a contemporary fiction class to teach Stephen King's The Green Mile. And I think that that movie is also a really, really beautiful movie, and holds up as well as the novel does. So, okay, I'm going to stop volume 2 here. And I think there's going to be a volume 3 because I still have quite a few questions to answer. But I thank everyone for participating in this little Q&A. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.